Hello, welcome. This is the Architecture Unknown podcast. I'm Charlie. Dan.
Dan.
Supposed to introduce us, mate.
Yeah.
Do it again. Hello and good afternoon. This is the Architecture Unknown podcast. Today we are talking about artificial intelligence and the architectural profession. With me today are my two business partners, Dan and Sean.
Hello.
Today we're going to start off, as always, with the news. Does anyone want to go first?
Sure. So, in the news recently, the Chelsea Stadium by Herzog de Meuron, its planning permission has now expired and has officially been scrapped. This was due to last year when Roman Abramovich struggled to get his UK visa. In other news, the ex-RIBA president, Jane Duncan, and her practice, Jane Duncan Architects, are currently being sued for 1.2 million in damages after their practice admitted to failings in its design of a swimming pool roof.
It's always the bloody swimming pools.
It is the
roof. The roof.
It was the roof.
That's where it all happens. That's where you get the inside rain if you don't properly.
So the a Hertfordshire couple, Joel and Kate Pratt, filed papers last year claiming a series of losses due to the design. However, the courts have said that until the ARB have determined the allegations, they won't respond on the court case yet. And guys, do you have anything else to add to that?
I'm really disappointed with that Herzog de Meuron stadium. Looking forward to that.
You're not even a Chelsea fan as well.
I'm not a Chelsea fan. I may look like Frank Lampard, but I'm not a Chelsea fan. So I'm really disappointed with that because it was really different from those typical kind of fiber cement panels and steel buildings. So that's a real shame. Hopefully that can be resurrected again once Abramovich gets his visa sorted. I think it was
politics of architecture.
Politics of architecture, yeah. I heard this week that it's possibly the National Trust has lost up to 200 million of their funding or down 200 million because of the coronavirus and its impact on across the board of its services that it provides. So that's a real shame. So everyone get down and join them and pay their membership fees and try to keep them going because they're such a great institution that we don't want to lose them. We really don't.
Yeah, and it's a fundamental part of holding on to our national heritage and assets.
Yeah, among other things. Yeah. Also, as well, I've seen that in Altrincham markets, they've managed to. The business rates have been hiked by a wonderful 483%. I mean, it's just so typical of
eye-watering
of councils, and it's obviously they blame councils blame the central government, but we strangle our town centres for every single penny.
Yeah, and then wonder why they become dead centres.
And then someone does a lot of effort to regenerate, and then go boom. They weren't even told about the increase either as well. So just typical. In other news, there's been a influx of dads and middle-aged men, flocking to B&Q this last week as B&Q reopened. Swarms of middle-aged men were noticed with power tools and timber wandering the streets, glad to get out of their homes. But I suppose it's indicative of, I think people are starting to kind of, get fed up with lockdown and hoping that I think things are starting to kind of get going again.
How was B&Q on last week, mate?
I got lots of timber, actually, lots of timber. I'm going to go again on Monday because I've made a mistake and I'm really disappointed myself. Anyway.
You were one of the middle-aged dads, weren't you?
Oh, God, not a dad.
In all but name, yeah. One half of that anyway. We won't tell the viewers which half.
But I suppose that's this week as well in the news. £10 billion worth of sites of work has been reopened again, restarted. So I think it looks like things are starting to take over again. Whether that's right or wrong or we're ready for that is another question. But we have another issue as well, which is a material squeeze. Maybe all those dads need to stop buying all the timber because seemingly builders are having an issue with the supply chains, obviously because of the knock-on effect of the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope we can
get that sorted soon. Do you have something against dads, Dan, or is this just?
I have to spend such a long time in the queue. I was like, oh. Why are there so many people here? You know?
It's like that.
I'm just trying to build a barbecue like everybody else. You know, so.
I mean, it's like that that saying about traffic: "Don't rage against traffic. You are the traffic." In other news, another area that is seeing a significant squeeze is the Into Trafford Centre. As many people will already know, the Trafford Centre is under significant financial duress. Recently has reevaluated its portfolio and decided that it's actually an extra almost £2 billion worth of debt. Ouch. Question to all of our viewers: would anyone be very, very sad if the Trafford Centre disappeared or was mothballed? Or would that be a boon to the city of Manchester? Looking forward to hearing your answers on this. Maybe they will survive.
I've got a suggestion for the Trafford Centre.
Okay.
Return to a giant, like, you know, laser quest.
Well,
or like paintballing players.
Paintball arena. How much? Dan, you can't jog that far. You couldn't jog to from one end of the Trafford Centre to the other.
A lot of people can't. It's very big, okay? It's very big.
Dan's going to want motor vehicles and everything involved.
I can imagine some brilliant, like, zombie apocalypse type paintball experiences in the Trafford Centre. That would be
1,000 people against 1,000 people. You know, just go massive.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Fighting on the wake of the Titanic.
Process.
You know, it's like it's got some significant legs, that idea. If anyone wants to partner with us to bring that forward, please let us know. Obviously, again, if you have any strong feelings about the Trafford Centre, also let us know. We will read out the best quotes for next week. Great. Moving swiftly on to our next topic of discussion, we've reached in a hat and come up with artificial intelligence and architecture. Now, we were discussing this internally. We were coming up with some rather different solutions of what artificial intelligence is. We came down to it that actually, having researched it, the idea of like Skynet or artificial consciousness is quite a long way away. But the idea of an artificial machine learning being better at predicting our behavior, being better at understanding our biochemical signatures and the things that make us tick on a cellular level, is actually much closer, much more potential impact for our industry. So I'll let you go first, Dan, on what you think about this. And
I have a couple of questions. I suppose I'll start with this one. Like, will creatives be usurped by intelligent robots or supercomputers? I think it kind of, it does feel kind of a worry that may be the case. But currently, obviously, computers are not very good at open-ended creative solutions. They just gobble up data, and we use that. But I guess, is there a time soon or in the future where they'll get so good at understanding data and processing data that they can, be creative as well, and there's no need for us? And how does that affect, how do we kind of, evolve in that environment? Do we embrace it, shun it, or be scared of it, or kind of go, right, okay, but let's be the ones to create that, that new world? Or how do you guys think we'll react to that? And is it true?
Well, we've seen some pretty big paradigm shifts in the way we work, but every time that shift has happened, it's always been quicker. So we had the hunter-gatherer stage for several million years, which then after that switched to an agricultural society, which was 7,000. And then finally we went to this industrial, which was for 2 centuries or so. And then we went into this information stage, which is about 10 years. And we've now got the specialists kind of saying that AI will very much become part of our work scenarios in 10 to 20 years' time. And the way that it will kind of merge with the way we currently produce architecture or any sort of creative profession that we're talking about is kind of crystal balling it. Will we learn to work side by side with it, or will, as you said, will it usurp the creative population and do those jobs for us?
Well, I think it's important we have to answer that question, or at least plan for it, because if we don't, like in the past, changes have happened to architecture, in the architecture industry, and we've fallen behind, and we've allowed ourselves to be usurped by surveyors, usurped by developers, because we have been too like, oh no, this is how we do architecture, and we don't want to do it any other way in the past. And so do we do the same again and then become less and less relevant and have, so we have, unfortunately, as an industry, I think we've we've been pigeonholed more and more, and if we don't be part of that discussion and part of that creation of what will be the future, we'll just end up being just cat monkeys, or even more marginalized. And I think we have to be part of that conversation.
I think from my perspective, yes, humans will, well, not humans, but architects will be usurped by artificial intelligences. And I think that this applies to pretty much all creative industries, generally speaking. I think the tipping point will be, and the real determining factor as to how far and how much, is how much control we're willing to cede over data to artificial intelligences. These intelligences are not going to be able to create new data, but they will be able to process it very fast, as you say. And they may be able to draw on sources that we are either physiologically unable to access, or just only some portion of the population have thought about and trained enough to notice. So I'd standard one is this idea of a lie detector test. Some humans are better at detecting lies.
The fact of the matter is that 50% of the architect profession, whether you're a part 1, 2 or architect, are sat doing not necessarily creative work, they're just producing drawings, elevations, sections. It's going to get to a stage where the artificial intelligence goes from this kind of passive, boring calculator to this technology source where you can just put in a few rules and it will generate the plan, sections, elevations for you, making half of the architecture profession redundant, and the other half will just be this kind of data herder controlling what sort of drawings they want.
I think you're missing the point. I think you're dead. Sorry, you're dead right with that point, that half of us could be made redundant and half becomes the data herders. But I think if that's only happens if we stand back and allow it to happen, and not be passive and not active, because that other half could be the half that actually, instead of just not being redundant, they retrain in a different way to be the coders, be the designers, be the shapers, but also the philosophical and ideological drivers of what this architecture is and how our built environment is designed, which is then input and drives on the AI to a general direction, left or right. Because obviously, I think there'll never be a one answer again, even for AIs. Say you could input into a computer a load of data about a house. I think that there's no probably right answer. There might be 2 or 3 right answers, and this is where maybe we can still have a role in kind of shaping which one of those is the actual final answer, or how the shape, the design, I think we can mold future what's the phrase I'm looking for? How we actually live. I think, and that's a step we can go further than an AI, hopefully. And I think maybe that's where we got to go.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I think, in many ways, the future belongs to the philosophers. I think we need to have those ethical, philosophical discussions now to determine, the parameters for an artificial intelligence that emerges in the architectural profession. Because what we don't want to do is leave it up to Silicon Valley to have that decision, and then it be made without us being in the room.
That's like leaving planning up to the Deloitte.
Yes. Yeah, quite. And if you don't get that joke, you need to read more about Deloitte. But Sean, you're right, absolutely. There will be a loss of architectural necessity for some of the more mundane tasks that we undertake. And I think, if we don't lobby effectively, Dan, for the constraining of artificial intelligence, or more rightly, constraining the data sources that artificial intelligence is allowed to access, then there is a worry that not just architects, but all creatives, and in effect most people, will leave the economic pool and be replaced. Because if an artificial intelligence has enough sensory data to be able to understand your emotions intimately and to be able to relate them to real life experiences that you're having, then it will be able to tell you the family dynamic in a house, and then design a new home for those people who may not even realize that those are the things that are driving them, but actually the artificial intelligence realizes enough to be able to implement a better solution to their lives.
So there's an interesting one, is that I think where we can be better is we can use our actual our self-conscious and our understanding of life and the future of life and the meaning of life, to actually realize that maybe that's not the actual answer they need right now. It's the answer that all the data says is what the answer is. But actually, we need to realize that, and this is what good architecture does, it changes people, it grows people, and that's where we can add that our worth, I think, because we have a better understanding. I think you can't really teach a robot, hopefully, really teach that philosophical level or the understanding of life to an AI. You might go, well, here's A, B, and C, and the answer is D. But what the answer is actually not D, because their dynamic is not right. They're not healthy. They're all living, it can't read that, understand that. And we can go, well, the actual answer is X. And then, if you're the post-rationalize it, actually the things are actually A, D, W, and Y, and they equal X. And then we've seen that because we can understand life in a way maybe AI can't.
I mean, I was being optimistic when I said that 50% could be made redundant. I've been looking, I was reading an article last week. It talks about an architect, Sebastian Azurius, apologies for the pronunciation, but he reckons that 90% of architects may be made redundant, and we just have to accept that we're not that special, which is not an optimistic look on the architecture profession. But let me put a question to you guys. With an impartial perspective, is it worth keeping all these architects if we've got a machine that can do the job of all that 90%?
It depends. Should we just
learn to adapt?
It depends what we do instead. Adapting is only good for the people who are either able, economically, socially, or personally able to adapt. So the majority who aren't able to adapt or don't get that role that everyone else is now competing for need to have something to do. So
I also have
the question and the answer in one.
I also have a philosophical outlook in life, is that sometimes we grow, or there's economic growth and machine growth, and for the sake of it, I'll take a very simple one, is the Metrolink in Liverpool, where they want to replace the guards who would step onto the platform, make sure everyone's on and off again, with a machine, basically, just to kind of that would monitor people on and off, and then close the doors and then to go. Yeah, it was great, but the money that was spent on that the safety hasn't improved. Nothing's improved. All they've done is just for the sake of because they could, they removed those people and put a machine in their place just because they could. And sometimes we need to realize that, do we need to do all this progression, and for the sake of, because we can? And sometimes I go, well, you know what? Maybe we don't need to replace everybody with machines. Why? Because people still need jobs. People still need a life, need a purpose. So obviously, I think we should do more and more philosophical stuff in the arts and the humanities as a civilization. But I think sometimes we need to realize, where's the line? Where's the line? What's the point of the machine doing absolutely everything for us? Do we really gain that much from it, from what we lose, which is all the other things we'll lose?
Like I say, I mean, you can talk up the milk and honey of that situation as well. Say if, for example, even in that example, say all those ex-guards went on and were supported financially and economically to become their best selves, and produced something else that gave their lives meaning or allowed them to be better people generally, that might therefore have a justifiable reason for embracing that idea, that those particular robots. But somehow I doubt that that's what happened. So it does come down to that political but also philosophical understanding of, okay, we have an option here. In a globalized world, if one country adopts an AI approach and benefits from it, inevitably that approach will spread. And it may be that the people who don't adopt that approach then become left behind or unable to compete in other ways. Do we have to change the narrative about competition and what it means to be a human being?
Yeah, but I think, I like to kind of, I completely understand, but I think that at the same time, there is so many kind of positives about AI that we should be embracing. But yeah, you're right. I think we got to make sure we draw a line or manage it. And if we're not part of that discussion and that conversation, then like you're saying, it'll be Silicon Valley guys who will drive all that forward, and it will go the wrong way. It won't go the beneficial way, it'll go the wrong way. But speaking of beneficial, in the medium to short term, before we all get replaced by robots, what do you guys think will be some of the benefits of AI that we should embrace? This human error will be eradicated.
I think you're exactly right on the level of design. Is that humans obviously have their human area, and we only have a capacity to present so many options within the space of time, whereas a computer can do as many options as you like based on a certain set of constraints and restrictions. Whether it looks good or not, then maybe that is a role for the human to kind of decide. But you've got the artificial intelligence kind of producing all these different options for you.
I think, again, the data is the key, and the quality and substance of that data. For example, say you could remotely monitor and record people's reactions to a particular design. You could share that design very widely and gather not just that qualitative, oh yes, I liked it, but an emotional data point response, especially if it was coupled with some sort of like virtual reality. So you could get people to experience a design before it's been built, gather data on how they actually felt about it, not just what they said about it, and therefore implement a much more democratic planning and design process that would benefit cities in the long run.
There's a huge problem that will happen.
You talk about Instagram, Charlie.
Yeah, but will that happen though? Because
that reality, Sean.
That means you need to encourage AI growth, and with a massive socialist movement as well. You know, where people are all involved. You know, we could easily go tomorrow or the next few years, like say, take Manchester, right, and completely design it into a 3D world and realm where it's drawn perfectly. You know, all the details, every single building, the spaces that would feel that there, right? And then every new project could be put in that there. But really, would they allow that? Would they do that? And then every citizen could access that and actually walk around, put a headset on, walk around and go, actually, no, that bloody tower is too big. And I can feel the wind around my legs. And I don't like that. And I feel really kind of, you know, or actually, I love these towers, you know, and we get an actual reality of it, you know, and you can build that up. But then again, you're always going to get people who hate stuff and like stuff. So how do you balance that as well, you know?
It's actually well known though that knowing good design from bad is actually quite easy to determine when you actually ask good questions and listen more broadly. A lot of people have similar tastes.
I agree. For me, that's where the architects should be focusing in the future, is being the leader of that and being the ones who drive the AI of the future to involve that and to really kind of, you know, focus on those kind of things.
I like that we've come to quite a sort of Platonic conclusion that the future of the architect is that philosopher designers rather than philosopher kings. Yeah. I think we all need to understand better what we all think architecture is for, what we think is good architecture, but not just inherit those views from our professors or from the media. We need to really interrogate what makes good places good and what makes bad places bad, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. And that needs to be a global conversation with everyone involved, not just architects.
So do you think we're going to be, say to summarize it, right, we're going to be, you know, architectural philosophers, but also some of us are going to be architectural managers. Where we're basically going to be, you know, herders of information, but there'll be a role for both of us, both types of people.
Definitely.
Is there a third one?
I mean, everyone should be an architect. Everyone's design opinion should matter in the same way that ours does now, or our clients. That would be the true test of a useful scenario for AI and architecture in the future. How many views are able to be taken into account? And also in the background, what's the downside of having those views be accessible to an artificial intelligence who controls that data in the long term?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think the first place it needs to get to, and I think I would love to see, is planning change to an AI who could actually, you know, take over. And actually, there's actually, you know, not because, you know, one planner thinks he likes brick and another planner doesn't like brick, you know, and then there's an actual thought process behind planning that actual architect that actually work to and actually know then what people want. I think that's where it should go first.
We certainly talked about this back in the university days when we spoke about collecting qualitative data from not just the people involved in the project, but actual the public. And maybe an AI could be used in that way to, as Charlie was saying, determine an emotion on a particular project or a proposed set of plans or drawings. And in that sense, you can have a much more collaborative design process, which is certainly something that we would all get behind.
Absolutely. So that was interesting. Thank you very much, guys, for your views. We're going to finish up today with hot or not? Now, I'm going to start with not because I'm feeling freaky. Not from today. I'm going to have to edit this out because I completely forgot what it was.
You moron.
Not hot for today is container architecture. I don't know what your guys' opinions are. There are some good examples of architects using containers, but I think there's a lot of bollocks out there and a misuse of a structure. I think that in general, the rate of misuse is such that the entire genre, or subgenre, I should say, of architecture should be scrapped. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're pointless. I think we should be spending, instead of, I know we need to reuse containers, because it's the reason why there's so many containers, because it costs more money to ship them back and to make a new one. But I think that should be addressed.
Yeah. There's got to be a more creative manner to do it than just cutting a few holes in it and then adding some, you know, curtain wall glass to it. You're caught
between a rock and a hard place so much of the time. Containers work structurally when they are whole. You can't cut holes in them because they don't work when you cut holes in them. So you either have very boring buildings that are all rectangular and have windows in the ends, or you mess up a perfectly, you know, strong structural piece to make it look more interesting, that then invalidates the entire point of it being there. So yes. Which one is it? Which one do we want? Boring buildings or buildings that are structurally inefficient because you have to restructure them to make them more interesting?
I guess for me, I suppose the reason why people like them, and you know, there's probably two reasons, which is there's a kind of a coolness about it. Oh, look, it's quite different, and you know, from a normal building. But at the same time, I suppose we are reusing containers that can't be used for anything else because, like I said, it's cheaper to bin them than it is to send them back.
You say that, but my understanding is that most containers that are used structurally have to be new. Because you can't guarantee that an old container is going to have the same structural properties as a new one.
Fair enough. Because of the elements that it could have been exposed to.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, I suppose what we're really saying is that whilst we promote the kind of morals of upcycling this product, it's that the product is faulty in that it can't be adapted. Even though containers were never supposed to be used for this sort of thing, we found that use. And now that we have, might be worth investigating how we can improve the steel container and maybe can change the way that we transport objects from place to place.
So what's the point? Unless obviously that the adaptation they make to the containers is less than what it would cost for a normal building. Then again, if that's the case, then we have to look at the buildings we make and why they're so much more expensive and reevaluate that. I think it's just it's a fad, which I think is
it'll age poorly. I think it'll age poorly. And if we're talking about modular systems, there are lots of better ones that are specifically designed for buildings. Let's use those instead. More sustainably. Fantastic. Okay, moving finally on to the hot building. It's not a building, which is going to mess with some people's minds. So the scheme and initiative that I want to talk about today is architects getting involved in keeping children occupied at home with architectural activities. I'm referring to Foster's recent publication of a series of architectural exercises for young people and children, generally speaking. Great initiative, love it. We ourselves have luckily been able to be involved in a project which is called Playhouse, organised by Playground Design Studios, among others. Fantastic competition. You may have seen it on the AAJ and the zine. Trying to come up with the best way of keeping children entertained at home. Our entry was called Pick-a-Drawery, a reimagination of Piccadilly Gardens and an encouragement for children to engage with unusual architectural clients. If anyone's interested, there'll be links in the text below and links to our website. So if you want to download Pick-a-Drawery and draw with your friends and reimagine Piccadilly Gardens, you're more than welcome to.
So please go to the Playhouse link as well and look at the different ideas they have there. Think of your own ideas. You know, you're bored at home, start thinking of ideas. It's great, and it's a great way to get that get your creative juices going again, as they say. I think it's very easy for us to kind of stagnate, sit on the computer all day long doing our work, but it's be a bit of a child again and a bit more creative, like maybe you were in university, or so get involved and make a submission to the Playhouse group as well.
So my hot today is keeping yourself occupied at home in an architectural fashion. We are Architecture Unknown. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please let us know your comments, thoughts, opinions. Even if you hate us, please write it down below. We will make fun of you next week. And good luck with everything in the time between then. Have a good one. Take care now.